Hey guys, welcome to VA Fridays. Hopefully you guys had a great week. I am here in Orange County, California, helping my sister celebrate her husband's 50th birthday. So that's why it's looks nice instead of Washington. So Washington's getting better. But today we're going to be talking about the temporary ban that the VA announced this week. And we're going to kind of talk about it. It's really hard to kind of interpret sometimes, but we're going to do my best to kind of give you my take on it. And if you guys have any insight, because a lot of it really applies to the agents more so than it does to the lenders for now. So it's kind of interesting on how it all plays out. So before I get right into it, I'm going to do a quick dad joke for you guys. My quick dad joke is... what do you call a woman who knows where her husband is at all times? What do you call a woman who knows where her husband is at all times? A widow. Woo! All right, so getting right into it. So I'm going to share my screen and show you guys what the main part of the VA circular. So a VA circular is essentially a revision or a current revision of the VA lender's handbook. Instead of having to change the handbook, they'll put out a circular for more guidance, for more clarifications, or maybe they just, override what the VA lender's handbook states. So for this one, this is the VA circular that talks about the temporary ban in a buyer's agent commission. So it talks about how, what the purpose of this, for VA buyers to be able to pay commissions and things like that. And what is going to happen when we're in a situation where, or go into more of a, market where it's more common for the buyer's agent commission to be paid for by the buyer. So how does that work? Well, until August, nothing's been permanently placed. So I want to make sure that's very clear. Nothing's been permanently placed, but this is up until probably August 10th, August 15th, for them to put something in place so that they have some kind of response to the NAR settlement. So first off, I want to kind of read off, it says temporary local variance, which means it's very specific to the local area of the MLS, that governs that area. So that's the key thing. So it all depends on how the MLS is. As how I understand it is that there's two types of MLS. MLS that's member ran or member owned, and then there's one that's NAR owned. So that's a really big distinction in regards to how this circular or this guidance applies first. So really, it just says VA is authorizing a temporary local variance that allows veterans to pay reasonable and customary amounts for any buyer brokerage charges, including commissions and any other broker-related fees, subject to the following. Okay, keyword subject to the following. So the first one is the veteran purchasing in an area where, one, listing brokers are prohibited from setting buyer broker compensations through the multiple listing posting. So this is where we're talking about the MLS. Are they allowed, if they're not allowed to show the buyer's agency commission on the MLS, or the buyer broker commission cannot be established by or flow through the listing agent, as in the listing agent can't talk about it, this is where it starts to apply. So buyer broker charges cannot be included in the loan amount, so can't do that yet. Buyer broker charges paid or to be paid by the veteran to be considered determining whether the veteran has sufficient liquid assets to loan. So this means that in addition to like the closing costs they may have to bring to the table, they must show liquid assets to afford the buyer's agent commission out of pocket. So basically they must have enough money to pay for the buyer's agency commission. So that's the main thing. Right now, it cannot be added to the loan because that's a bigger change. That's a bigger thing. The only thing that's ever can be added to the loan on top of the purchase price and not negotiated in the purchase price. There's two ways, obviously. The only one that can just be added to the loan is the VA funding fee. That can just be added on top of the loan and then boom, good to go. And the appraisal is not, and it's not dependent on the appraisal. The other way is it's part of the purchase price, which is how we've been normally doing it, where it's negotiated by the listing agent for both the buyer's agent and the seller's agent to be inside of the purchase price. Okay, that's different from adding it to the loan amount. The next thing is buyer broker charges to be paid by the veteran are to be considered determining whether the veteran has liquid assets. We just talked about that. And an invoice is not necessary to support the buyer broker charge. However, the total amount, if any, by the veteran is to be recorded in lines 1 to 3. Basically, has to be shown on the closing disclosure, which in most cases, in some cases, it's showed on the settlement statement. It's not showing on the closing disclosure. So basically, what it's saying is that If the veteran is paying for the buyer's agency commission, then it's on the closing disclosure. Otherwise, if it's where the seller is paying for it, it doesn't have to be put on there. VA considers the buyer broker representation agreement to be part of the sales contract package. So if you have one, a buyer broker's agency agreement, you must include it, especially if the veteran is paying for the buyer brokerage commission or the buyer's agent commission. As such, VA expects lenders to upload the agreement as part of the package the lender is using when requesting an appraisal. So basically, we need that. So from moving forward, the best practice is we need to know is, especially specifically in Washington State, and really anywhere else currently, is that it's a best practice to clearly state who's paying for the buyer's agency commission, whether the seller or the buyer, and then if it's the buyer, a buyer's agency commission must be uploaded. A buyer agency representation agreement must be included with the contract. So that's something that as buyer's agent and selling agents, listing agents, you really have to kind of add to your process. I'd say it's not the biggest thing, but something you have to consider. And we have to retain this document. So there's some other information as to like information related to brokerage charges. The VA encourages veterans to negotiate it. And the temporary there's another note here. The temporary variance announced by this circuit does not prevent the seller of the home for paying the veteran's buyer's brokerage. It's just a way to build guidance. This document, all it does, it provides guidance in how the buyer's broker's agency commission can be paid for by the veteran. So really, all that's really changed on a number. Bottom line up front is that at this point, veterans can pay the buyer's commission, but it has to be cash. It has to be out of their own pocket or out of their own funds. I assume it can also be gifted funds, which is totally fine in this case. So that's one way to kind of look at this. So as a real estate agent, as a buyer's agent, if your client has, I would say, if your client has the ability to pay 3%, up to 3%, then I would say it's your responsibility to find a way to get the closing costs paid for by the seller within the purchase price. So that's something to consider, is another way to kind of switch around the numbers, because in some states, normal closing costs is around 2.5% anyway. So if the client has the ability to pay both closing costs and buyer's agent commission, depending if the seller is not able to, then that's upwards to about 5% in closing costs. So maybe you can get the 2.5%. Either you get paid by, I guess it's one or the other, depending on the negotiations and how it goes, is that you either have your commission paid through the purchase price or you have the closing costs get paid through the purchase price. So one or the other. That's pretty much how I would recommend it. Either way, it's kind of almost what we already been doing, with just an added benefit that the VA buyers can officially now, for a while, pay for the buyer's agent commission out of their own pocket. Right now, if it's negotiated as part of the purchase price, where the seller pays for it like normally, that's how you can go about it. But I'd say if there's a possible way, and the listing agent has done a really great job in setting expectations and really walking through the client with the numbers, there's a very strong chance that nothing really changes. But keep that in mind, that VA buyers can now have the ability to pay for it. It's just hopefully the sellers are still as generous as they have been to be able to pay for that. So that's something to consider. Either way, the only thing that's really changed is that VA buyers can now pay the commissions out of pocket, and making sure you have all the proper some of that the buyer's agency agreement uploaded with the contract when you send it over to the lender. So that's the main thing I get out of this, in order to kind of give you guys an idea of what's going on. Again, this really only applies to states where the MLS system, from what I understand, is ran by NAR, who cannot post or talk about the buyer's agent commission. So for like states like Washington, this almost doesn't apply right now. So basically business as normal. Anyway, that's about all I got for you guys. Hopefully this made sense. Give me your input, give me your feedback, because I'm reading this from a lender's loan officer perspective. I'd love to hear the real estate agent perspective, and kind of make this more of an open dialogue. So let me know what you guys think. Otherwise, that's all I got. Have a great weekend, and I will talk to you guys Monday for Market Mondays.